Okay, good afternoon from Geneva. Good morning to those of you in other time zones. Good evening to those of you it's late night for. We appreciate your joining for this webinar today. It's a first in a series of a few different modern airline retailing webinars. So I'm fortunate to get to kick it off this week with talk about the Airline Retailing Maturity Index. Just 1 minute while I close this window. There. Okay, hopefully everybody's seeing my screen. Yep, I'm checking and that's great. Okay, so I am Catherine Little. If you're in the ARM Index program, you probably know me as Kitty, and I kind of oversee all the aspects of the ARM Index program here with a whole team of people. And so I'm fortunate enough to come to you today and introduce to you the ARM Index program. I'm hoping so you walk away from this knowing how this can be a tool that's very useful to you. And how you can see the industry through this tool. And then also I'll give you some insights on kind of the data that we have coming in and where we're going from there. But first I'll start with the program and really dive into well, I'll get into that. No spoilers. Okay, so with that, let's see. There we go. Everything's operating. Awesome. Okay, so with that, what I want to start with is my absolute simplest definition of airline retailing. So in the Airline Retailing Maturity Index, we look at airline retailing using offers and orders. And as simple as I can make it, it's the ability to consistently sell and deliver to customers the products they want at the time they want, in the way they want, either directly or via intermediaries. Now, that's not just for airlines. For airlines, it's selling. It's pretty obvious, right? Either directly or via intermediaries, but also for sellers, whether you're selling, no matter what tool you're using, no matter what system you're using, however you're connecting to your customers, it's selling to them the products that they want when they want at the time they want. So all of that, it means that there's this whole big value chain, right? We all know there's a value chain in airline retailing. And the system providers are out there making this possible along the value chain. They're opening it up and making it possible. So with that, what's the purpose of the ARM index, the Airline Retailing Maturity Index? And that's to bring visibility within this industry. So the public part of this program brings visibility so that the industry can know who is capable of what in a way that's compliant with what the industry standards have. So what are people capable of, what are companies, capable of doing? But then there's a whole other part to this program, or two more parts to this program, that are about what is the relevant information for the industry and for individual companies to help the industry become more mature through companies becoming more mature in airline retailing. So all of that is the work of the Airline Retailing Maturity Index. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is give you an overview, kind of walk you through the program, and also walk you through the outputs of the program so that you can see how this affects your company, but also how you can get more visibility on the industry. I will go into overview here, and then I'm going to go into detail on each part of it. So first of all, the capabilities verification, or first of all, there's three pillars to the Airline Retailing Maturity Index. And the first one is the capabilities verification. And this is about the capabilities that are enabled by IATA standards. So previously we had NDC certification and one order certification. And these looked at the technical compliance to the standards, but now we're looking at the capabilities that are enabled by the standards. And I'm really going to go into a lot of detail on this for you today. So just hold any thoughts on that for a moment and we'll come right back to it. For partnerships deployment, it's about scaling across the retail value chain. So this is about your network reach and your partnerships and your scaling in volumes of transactions. We're really looking at that within there. So I'll come back with more detail on that, but it's really about scaling. And then the third piece is the value capture compass. And this piece is about the maturity of capturing potential value. It's really looking at the changes in strategies and policies and methodologies. Now, not everyone gets every pillar of this. So the first pillar for capabilities verification is for airlines, it's for sellers, it's for system providers. The second pillar on partnerships deployment looks at each end of the pipe. So it looks at sellers and it looks at airlines. And then the value capture compass is looking very specifically at airlines at this time and looking at their maturity within the capture of potential value. So I'm going to walk through all of these pillars for each of you, even though some of them aren't for you specifically, so that you can see how they're helping the industry. Okay, so with that, I'm going to dive into capabilities verification first. Okay, so within capabilities verification, it's set up such that there are 6 streams of capabilities. You can see them there: shop, order, pay, settle, account, and setup. And within those 6 streams, there are 75 capabilities for airlines and 54 capabilities for sellers. And all of those capabilities are verified using XML messaging, using company documents, and using screenshots and demos. So we use a mixture of things to be able to verify each of the different types of capabilities. And out of that comes a recognition which has a participation in our registry. And I'm going to go way into the registry and show you all sorts of things about that in a minute. But what I want to highlight here first is that there are more capabilities and more streams that will be added in the future. So what you don't see on there is travel and delivery. You don't really see anything on interline and partnerships, nor anything on digital identity. And these are 3 areas that we've already identified, which means there's probably more areas out there that will be added as we come in the future as well. So think of this as a growing flower. So we're as mature as we are now as an industry, but as the industry matures more, we'll see more that needs to be within this. Also, I want to note that this is across to different versions of the standards that IATA has. And so as the versions of the standard change, the whole of the capabilities verification becomes strengthened. And I'll talk a bit more about that coming up here. Okay, so all of the capabilities, the 75 capabilities for the airlines and 54 for the sellers, are all defined. And they're all publicly defined. The guidance documentation is all within the public site. And so a capability is really a business function that is enabled or a business function that a company may be capable of that's enabled by IATA standards, and it's IATA standard messaging. So what you can see here is an example of shop for flights. That's a capability. You can see here that I've made the definitions bigger so you can read them, but you can see it's defined both from the airline perspective and from the seller perspective. And then for every capability, a system provider is looked at based on the definition of who their customer is. So if I'm a system provider that provides systems for airlines, I'm going to use the airline definition. If I provide systems for sellers, I use the seller definition. And then further out from that is that all of these are linked to the enhanced and simplified distribution implementation guidance. So this is the official guidance that has been set by the industry. And as that documentation gets better and better, it's more and more linked. But as you go through the capabilities within, you'll see that most of them point directly to the implementation guidance and the best practices. And so with that, we look at within the ARM Index team, when we're looking at and recognizing these capabilities, they're all against these same criteria. And so you'll see that we also have a minimum set of requirements for each one. In this particular example, it's based on messaging, the air shopping request and response. But this is set up and documented for every single capability within the ARM Index. Okay, so the ARM Index capabilities are better. So this is to speak to anyone who knew about NDC certification before. So if you didn't know about NDC certification, don't worry about it. But for those of you that did, it was based around the technical compliance of the messaging. Okay, and so what we looked at was the messages, air shopping request and air shopping response, and were they compliant with the schema. So what we've done in moving to the ARM Index is we've enhanced that to not just look at whether things are technically compliant, but to look at the content of the messaging, to look at whether or not the content is compliant or is enabling a capability, okay? So what we're doing is we're looking at, when we look at air shopping request and response, that's one set of messages, but there are about 16 different capabilities that can be based off of that. So can I shop for flights? Can I shop for a multi-city open jaw itinerary? Can I shop using multiple airlines are returned in the response? Can I I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head. Sorry, a little nervous doing the webinar. So there's many different capabilities that are functionally within just this one pair of messages. So we used to have levels, and that was kind of a shortcut. But when we designed this tool to be more meaningful and more specific. So while we've lost the shortcut of the levels, we have hopefully brought you something more meaningful to what you're looking for. And I'm going to give one example of this, and you'll see it within the registry as well when I show it to you. So one seller advised me that they only like to work with level 4 airlines. And so I asked what about level 4 was meaningful to them. And they said, well, it means the airline has servicing. And I said, okay, which part of servicing? We have more than a dozen capabilities for servicing, whereas level 4 was only about checking that 5 messages were compliant with the schema. So it's not that level 4 wasn't great, it's that we've done something that expands that and hopefully makes it more meaningful to you. So now you can tell if they can do a reshop, if they can do a name change, if you can pay for an existing order. All of these things are things that were within servicing that you would may be more meaningful to you than just knowing that they're compliant with the messages. Okay, so the registry is the public tool. And so I'm going to take a moment here and switch over and do a live demo of the registry so that you can see how this tool can be helpful to you. Again, I just want to highlight we're still on the first pillar of this program, but this is the publicly visible pillar. So I want you to know what the tool is out there that you can use and you can dig into for your company. So give me just a second while I click over here. And it should load up, and everybody should be able to see the ARM index registry. Okay, great. So within the ARM index registry, as you scroll down, you'll see that we currently have a list of 162 companies, and we have this big search box, which I'll come back to in a minute. And then we have the list down here. And as you scroll through the list, it's in alphabetical order because, you know. So I'm going to just pick on a GN for today and show off a few of the characteristics of this. So for every single company within the registry, they have some company details listed. So what type of company? This one's an airline. They have you can easily access their website from there, some contact details if you'd like to work with them, who their partners are, and when they entered the registry. So just some basic details. And then further to that, every single one of them shows the capabilities that are validated. Now, all companies in the registry have a minimum of 1 capability validated. We have some companies that have 1, we have some companies that have 30 or 40 or 50. So there's a big difference between how many capabilities, but all have at least 1 capability. So actually, to anyone who's not in the ARM index yet, if you would like to be and you've done some development, come talk to us, because as long as you have a minimum level of development done, you can come and be a part of the registry. So please don't be shy about asking. So with that, within each capability that we validate, there's a capability group. So like I said, the stream, shop, order, pay. But then there's also the capability name here. So here's a seller initiated change to an order requiring a reshop. If you click this link, it will take you to that documentation page. So the full definition of what this means is out there in public for everyone. And you can always, every time you're looking at a company, know exactly how it was checked and defined and what it means to have this capability. We show what schema version it's on. Now, I just want to stop and talk about schema versions for a second because this is important. There is a difference between 17.2 and 21.3. There just is. There's a difference in how much guidance documentation there is out there. There are differences in some of the functionalities that are out there. So it's important to look at what schema version they are. But as the schema versions and the documentations move forward and get stronger, so does the ARM index. So if you're recognized against 17.2, you're recognized against the documentation that was available at that time. If you're recognized against 21.3, you're recognized against the documentation that's available now. So we're looking at this on an ongoing basis, and the ARM index is actually getting stronger and stronger as more documentation and as we move forward as an industry. Next up, we have the entry date here, and I'll just highlight within the entry date, it's the date that they first had this capability. So you'll see some companies have multiple versions of the same capability, and it'll just be the first date. And then I want to highlight this column here that says confirmed live. I'll talk about this a little bit more when I switch over to talking about partnerships deployment. But what this column means is that some partner of this company has confirmed that this capability is live in implementation. Now, if this column is not checked, it doesn't mean that they don't have the capability live. It just means a partner hasn't confirmed it. So there's a confirmation process that's there. But the other side of that is if you're a company who would like it to be demonstrated that your capabilities are live within the industry, please come and talk to us and use that partnerships piece. The one caveat to that, and I'm sorry for everyone who's a system provider because you're going to be disappointed, is that this column doesn't apply for system providers, because system providers have many capabilities that they bring about and then they enact them for you based on your agreements with them. So it doesn't have the confirmation column for the system providers, but for sellers and for airlines, they confirm them for each other. And that's part of the partnerships thing I'll talk about in just a few minutes. Okay, so with that, what you'll also see is, I'm going to try to scroll slowly so I don't make everybody dizzy. The last piece down at the bottom is the messages verified, and these are the messages that sit behind those capabilities. So if you want to just look at a list of what messages a company has that could be useful to developers, it's down at the bottom. But scrolling back up, apologies if anybody gets dizzy. Here you'll see just above capabilities validated that there's a detailed list of the capabilities. And this is the same thing, but in a different view where it tells you the capability and what messages are behind it. We include this in here because for any given capability, well, not for all capabilities, but for many capabilities, there could be multiple workflows or multiple message ones. So for instance, if you're creating an order, you could go air shopping request response, order create, order view. Or you could go air shopping request response, offer price, request, offer price response, order create, order view. So those are two different ways to do it. So we wanted to make sure that it was clear as to which way this company was validated against. So we include those details back here. So if I just shift back to the company's profile page, you'll see that any one of these can be exported individually as a company. Okay, so that's it for the company page, and I'm just going to take you briefly through our search function and our select and compare function. So here within the registry is the search function, and this is a bit different from our old search functions, so I just want to highlight it. Number one, the company type. You can be an airline or a seller. You can be a system provider for an airline or a system provider for a seller. And this is so that when you are coming, you can more easily search for what will be most beneficial to you and useful to you. So for example, a system provider for an airline might be an API provider, or they could be an offer management system provider or an order management system provider. Whereas a system provider for a seller could be the front end or mid office provider, or it could be the aggregator that's doing the aggregation. Now, any company that sits in the middle is going to have a flow through. So we're looking at who's going to utilize the information, not who's putting the information in necessarily. Okay. So with that, we still have that you can search by standard version, but we also have it that you can filter by capabilities. So if you just want to look at anybody who has payment capabilities, you can set that. If you just want to look at shopping capabilities, that's fine. But also we go to the granular level where you can actually search by any capability itself. So we can take it, and I'm just going to do the reshopping capability again and run the search so that you can see that 64 companies are validated against the reshopping capability. Okay, so what this means is you can run a search, or you can use the whole thing, and you can come down here and select all of them, or you can select just some of them to be able to export into a comparison. And I just want to show you the comparison. And then I promise I won't go into any further details. It's pretty intuitive. But so when you select a comparison of companies, it comes with an Excel spreadsheet. I think everybody can see it now. And that Excel spreadsheet, you can filter in all sorts of different ways. So you can look for, it'll show you all the various versions that any company has. So if it's blank, they don't have the capability. If it has versions listed, they have that capability. Each capability is listed here on the side and has a link again to the documentation of what the definition is of that capability. We used the unique identifiers here, so I know that might make it a little harder to identify which capability it is, but you can open up the documentation and see it. But also each of them has the company up here with a link to the company's individual page. And so this way you can come and find the information you're looking for. You can compare who has the capability that you want. So we did a search based on everybody with the reshop capability. So each of these 3 companies definitely has the reshop capability. And I can filter it down based on other capabilities within here or schema versions or such. So use this. We've created it as an Excel export so that you can use it functionally in whatever way is most valuable to you. Okay, so with that, I'm just going to close that Excel and give you one more piece of information about the site. And that is, when you're in the site, well, I'm in the registry right now, you can also click over and go to the full Airline Retailing Maturity Index site, where you'll find all of the resources and documentation and the self-service platform, as well as the registry. But additionally, we do have tools for developers here, such as the XSD viewer, which makes it a little bit easier to use the schemas for development. And we also have, you can click over to the IATA.org retailing site. And this airline retailing site contains all sorts of things on airline retailing that don't sit directly under the ARM index. So lots of fact sheets and information about the overall airline retailing, not just specific to the tool that we have. So with that, I'm going to scooch back over to my presentation. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me. Okay. So thank you for letting me go ahead and walk you through that tool. I hope that that will be useful to you and that you can use it to then filter and search for the companies and search for the information. So if you're out there looking for an airline that can do a particular thing, or if you're out there looking at the particular airlines you work with, so if I'm a seller and I will only work with airlines who can offer me open jaw multi-city itineraries through an NDC messaging, then I'm going to go in and search and pull up the list of all the airlines that have that capability. And then I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to know, okay, which one of those are airlines that I work with, which one of those makes sense to me to do a business connection with. Because obviously any connection you make is going to have to make business sense first and foremost. Okay. So with that, I'm going to jump over and talk about partnerships deployment. And actually, I'm going to pause here for a split second and just say, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the questions box and send them over to us. At the end, I'm going to answer any questions that I can. And if time doesn't allow, I will also answer any questions offline. I'll send you back an answer directly. So please don't be shy about asking. Okay, so partnerships deployment is the second pillar. Now, most of this pillar is not publicly visible. The one piece that is that blue box, and I just went over it within the registry. So this is the confirmation that a capability is live with partners. So what we do to get this is within partnerships deployment, a company, either an airline or a seller, will raise a partner. They'll send a partner request, and we'll send out a request that asks them to do 2 things. One is that blue box to confirm what capabilities are live, and the other one is the black box to offer a satisfaction score from their partners on ease of partnership. Now, it's a very basic scoring, and there's just a few different components to it, but those 2 things we bring about to bring more integrity and confirmation to how the functionality is there. What we also do with that is we use it, take that data and put it together and aggregate it to bring back to the company that is the entry, so the airline or the seller. So if an airline has a seller, give them a score. We aggregate that with the other scores and we bring it back to the airline so that they can see how they're doing in the eyes of their partners in a confidential way. The other side of this that we have is the 2 yellow and red boxes, right? So the yellow box is a collection of data about network reach and connections. It's looking at the quantity and types of partners that are using NDC content. That's the primary purpose of it right now. It's also designed to look at the number of partners using order management, but that's still in its infancy in the industry as a whole. So as that becomes bigger, that'll actually become a much larger part of this partnerships deployment as well. The last piece that we look at is NDC volumes. For airlines, this is as it's defined in DDS. And so for airlines and sellers, we ask them about the volumes of transactions that they're doing so that we can take a look at how it's scaling, not only in reach, but how much of that connection is being utilized. Okay, so with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the value capture compass. Now, this piece is just for airlines, and the partnerships deployment was just for sellers and airlines, and all of them output into a report. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the value capture compass, and then I'm going to come back and talk about the report that they get. So the Value Capture Compass is a survey. It's 50 questions, self-assessment. It's based around a value study that McKinsey did in 2019, which had 5 value drivers and a handful of enablers within it. And we've taken that and looked at those value drivers and how we can measure the maturity of an airline as we go through it. So the scoring is done out of 100. It's completely confidential. So the only people that see an airline score are the airline itself and IATA. But what we do is we take that and put it together with a comparison of peer airlines, and a comparison of industry leaders. And we offer that back as a benchmark, as well as some points to consider within your strategy, your policies, your methodologies, where there's value to be gained from the effort that you would put in. The value drivers are here. There's 6 of them within the survey. We just divided payments out, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So if you look at these value drivers, you can see that they aren't just NDC. So for years, we've been talking about NDC, but an airline is a full organization. And when it's moving to retailing in a modern retailing way, it's moving as a full organization. And so you can see that there are 6 drivers here, and one of them is very specific to indirect channels, but there's the pricing and revenue management, the bundling and product content. Those are overall global to an airline and looking at how it's done globally, and as well as the order management and servicing. With payment, it's looking at it globally, but I also want to remark that we are actually reviewing the payments portion of it so that we can get a lot more in detail and in depth on that. Last year, there were 2 payment studies done, one by Edgar Dunn and one by McKinsey, that really went into what's the value of payment. And so we've taken that and we're refining the payment portion of the Value Capture Compass. And I tell you that to once again emphasize that this is something that grows. As the industry grows and as our knowledge grows, this also grows so that it can better help you. So with that, the airlines and the sellers receive individual maturity reporting. Now, the airlines have already started receiving it, and the sellers are coming up very shortly here. We're putting it together for them. And what that looks like is it's a multi-page report, but I'm just going to show you the top I've lost the word. Oh dear. Sample page, the top page that brings everything together. So what the top page does, summary page, that's the word I'm looking for, summary page. So the top summary page, what it does is it puts each of these pillars together, and it looks at these things in conjunction with one another. So yes, it gives back the scoring, but what you can also do is look at it in comparison to one another and say, where do I have something to gain from moving forward? So in this particular one, the value potential that's been captured is 48 out of 100. And the sales that are NDC sales that are going on are 13%. And they're well established on their partner connections. And if you look over at the capabilities verification, they're well on their way in shop, order, and pay. So this is a company, this is all example data, this isn't actually one company in our industry, but if this were a company, they're well on their way, they're moving forward, but now they can look at where do I need to refine? Where do I pull and move forward so that I can get more value out of this and more, what areas do I have something to gain from? So not only do we give them this top summary sheet, but there's also more detailed sheets behind it to help more pinpoint each area. So with that, I just want to highlight that there's benefits for everyone. The ARM index helps everyone in different ways a bit, because not everybody's in each pillar, but it does help, hopefully, help everyone. We designed it to hopefully help everyone. And so with that, airlines actually, in even just completing all 3 pillars, have told me it dramatically helps them to understand the distance they've traveled in this journey. And then what we're offering back to them is to help them with the potential next steps that they can look at. Sellers have a much more broader or more detailed visibility. There's a feedback opportunity that we've built into it at the request of the sellers, and there's this benchmarking that they'll also be receiving in the reports. System providers, likewise, this thing is built for visibility, so we're offering more detailed visibility, but we're also offering a better search where your customers can search for you based on your company type. And then IATA. Why are we doing this? It's because with this industry view, we can offer a more data-driven industry help. We can help the industry in the ways that it's more specifically needs, and the ways in which it's already doing well, we don't have to help in those areas as much. I will say that as you look at overall this data-driven views, there are some areas that the ARM index doesn't touch on. We don't touch on commercial models. At IATA, we keep our hands out of all commercial models. And we actually don't touch on technical integrations. So for commercial models, we're totally hands off. But if you have something that has to do with a technical integration that isn't going well and could be an industry issue, please do bring it to us. We have a team that does implementations. Chanel, my colleague, leads the team, and they look at implementations and how that they can better help with the technical, what things are stopping the industry as a whole when it comes to implementations, to help move things forward better. Okay, so now I'm just going to do a little bit of data for everybody, and then we'll hit some questions and answers for everyone. So capabilities. So this is a regional view of all capabilities of all companies within the registry. There's over 2,000 capabilities in there. And I wanted to just show you guys this because it's global. We don't have any region that doesn't have a company and capabilities in there. Some of these companies have only one capability, and some of the companies have many capabilities. But overall, it's moving globally. There's global movement. While some areas started sooner, we're still seeing a big movement here. With that, I just want to highlight on the other side of it that this is a picture of the airline NDC sales volume. And so I just want to highlight that, again, we have global movement. It's not just capability. There's actually transactions there, and there's movement forward. This particular data is based on December, and that's about 6 months after the data I used for WPS. And I just want to highlight that 3 of these regions have gained some ground even since WPS, and I used that data for that. So, which was in October, in case anybody wasn't at WPS, sorry. So what I'm saying, in the last 6 months, as the data's moved forward, I can see that there's each of these is gaining ground, and some of them quite significantly. So, which is exciting. So it's not just capabilities. It's not just that we're capable of something. We're actually transacting quite a bit as well. Okay, so now just a little bit of an airline specific view, just so that we can see how this maturity thing plays out. So when we take the data from the value capture compass, we don't just look at an airline as a single, all airlines as a single group. We actually look at them across peer groups. And so what you can see here is that we have 3 different types. The reason we look at peer groups is because there's a different value for each type of airline within the group. And so what we do is we look at them as groups of carriers. And so I just want to say that because, as you can see, there's growth in all of them. So out of a scoring of 100, the global network carriers are at 50, the regional are at 54, and the point-to-point, which are LCCs, is at about 61. And they're all moving forward, but it's not that every carrier is forward. We have some, as you can see from the industry leaders, that are well over 80 out of 100 in their score, and we have some that are at 3 or 4, and many airlines that haven't even come into the ARM index yet. So this is a big industry transition. This is a big industry movement, but movement is happening, and we're very excited about that. And within that value capture compass, this is that same breakdown by value drivers that I showed you before, and I just wanted to show you that we've got where the movement is on these various parts. So unsurprisingly, since NDC's been around for a while and we've been talking about it for a while, that D, indirect channels and partnerships, is pretty well far forward. But we're also looking at how all of the areas are affected. And you can see that order management is behind, but that's to be expected, because as we shift into a world of fulfilling orders rather than fulfilling tickets, that will begin to grow and move forward rapidly. And again, just to highlight on the payments part of it, we are looking at that so that we can have a much more in-depth reading. So this is the current reading of it, but hopefully by the end of the year, we have much better reading on this huge potential that we have under payments. So with that, I'm going to leave you with to look at this screen of where you can find more information, because we have a full website out there. And if you have any company-specific questions, you can email us at armi@iata.org. And so we'll shift into questions and answers now. But while we're shifting, I had 4 people who were kind enough to pre-send us a question when you registered. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity to answer your questions that you asked when you registered. So the first question I got when we were registered is, what about TMCs? And so I have the happy thing to say that there are definitely TMCs in the ARM Index registry, several very large ones. And we are working quite often with TMCs. When the capabilities were built, we took into account a whole project that was done with TMCs to look at what can accelerate the adoption. And accelerate us to airline retailing. And so there was a project that was done about that, and that was taken into account in building those capabilities. And actually, we have a group that's called the Global Travel Management Executive Council, GTEC, and they actually meet with IATA and help us to see the value for the TMCs and to see where the movement is. And they're on. I would like to say they're on board, but they're excited about this. But of course, it needs to be done in the way that makes sense for the whole value chain. So don't worry, we're working with the TMCs and they're coming along. And so hopefully you'll see more and more of them in the registry as we move forward. There was a question about partners' capabilities. So what if I come on here and I see an airline and they have a capability that's live, but they have a capability that's been validated in there, but I don't have that capability as their partner. So there's a few different reasons for that. One is the ARM Index looks specifically at what a company is capable of. So we're not looking at the technical integrations and we're not looking at the commercial agreements. So when we look at whether a company is capable of doing it, that means it's within what they're doing that they're capable of. But there's a lot to go with technical integrations, and we understand that there's a whole ecosystem here, right? There's a value chain, and there may be intermediaries from one end to the other of the value chain, but there also may be just how it's technically integrated that doesn't make it possible. So if you see a capability there and you don't have it, check whether it's because of a technical integration, check whether it's because of your commercial agreement, or just go and talk to your partner and say, I'm interested in this, this would be helpful to me. Because I am positive that everyone in the value chain wants to move forward and do the best for business. So please have an open conversation with your partners. Another question that was presented to us was about unused tickets and split PNRs. And that one I'm actually not going to answer because I'm going to say there is a servicing because those both have to do with servicing and NDC. And there's actually a servicing webinar that is happening next week that will definitely dive into and answer questions like that. And tickets and PNRs deal with where we are right now, and the Airline Retailing Maturity Index aims to look at in a world of offers and orders. Now I know it begins with NDC, which is on tickets to begin with, but we don't come into the split PNRs. You'll never see a capability about a split PNR because it's a legacy, so to speak, and we're looking at offers and orders. And then the very last question I got was, how many companies are doing servicing? And my question would be, which servicing capabilities are you interested in? And maybe all of them. So maybe your question is, which companies are doing some sort of servicing, which companies are doing all of the servicing, which companies are doing all of the servicing I need. In which case, I very much encourage you to go take a look at the registry and filter it and search it based on what you need and take a look at that, because that's going to be important to you to get exactly what you need. And that is exactly why we've built this tool, so that you can have a look. Okay, so now I'm going to pause for a second and take a look at the questions. So let's see. Okay, sorry, I'm reading, everybody. Okay, so there's one. I want to make sure I don't miss the verification process. Could you restate, how do I know that the capabilities listed are accurate? Okay, so first of all, absolutely 100% every capability that is in the ARM Index registry is validated by IATA. So if we haven't validated the capability, it won't show up. So if you go look at an airline's page and there's a capability listed there, we have validated that they are capable of it. And validated they are capable of it based on the definition in the documentation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that confirmed live column. And what that confirmed live column means is that one of their partners has confirmed that they are using that capability live in an implementation. Now, some companies, some sellers and airlines are in here, and they haven't had a partner, they haven't asked partners to confirm those capabilities. So while those capabilities are there and presumed live, there isn't a confirmation of that within the tool itself. The other thing is system providers, again, can't have confirmation. We haven't set up that specific functionality yet, and therefore it won't be confirmed for them just yet. And so when you look at a system provider, you can, if that capability is there, it's been validated for everyone. The confirmed live is just if a partner has done that. Okay, I hope that answers the question for people. Okay, let me take a look at some more of these questions. Okay, let's see. Okay, as a benchmark, how do IATA airlines usually differentiate the NDC sales in their reporting? Okay, so usually the NDC sales can come to us in two different ways. The sales transactions either come to us through DDS, that's a particular IATA product. It's called the Direct Data Solutions, I believe, and that's where airlines participate in that. The other way is for all sellers and for some airlines that are not using DDS, they come to us through their own reporting. So it's manually reported through the airline. And then I think there was one other question you were showing me, sorry. Is there a reason for naming certain NDC messages as IATA air shopping request while the majority are simply air shopping requests? Okay, so the IATA moniker in front of it. So this is for anybody technically using the messaging. If you take a look at it over time, it's changed from when it was in 17.2 to 19.2 to 21.3. Like all of the different versions, they've evolved the way that they were naming the messages, but they should all be consistently named now in the version. And actually they have been, I think, for about 2 years now. So they just shifted in the middle of it why they were naming it. And that's why they have different names. Okay. If a system provider offers a solution on 18.1 and another solution on 21.3 schema, are the 18.1 capabilities backwards compatible? I couldn't tell you. And the reason I can't tell you is because they are validated on the 18.1 and they are validated on the 21.3. So I don't know within their integrations whether they're integrating with the 21.3 and creating it in a backwards compatible way or not. So I don't know about how they're integrating with those. I just know that we've checked their 18.1 messaging and we've validated not only the schema compliance, but the content for each capability. And likewise on 21.3, we've checked their their messaging, and we've looked at it both based on the schema compliance and the content validation. Okay. So let's see, let me take a look if there's further questions. Okay, so there's a question here that says not all active NDC aggregators have provided data or on the list on the ARM index, and that's true. The ARM index is not mandatory. So we have many companies throughout the industry, and depending on where you are, the region you're in, and for many different reasons, if it doesn't make business sense for you at this time with your company to be in the ARM index, then you're probably not. So we very much encourage everyone to come and get that visibility. And depending on where the company is, what stage it's in, it may decide to come or not come. But we do encourage people to come and to offer that visibility to the industry. Okay, let's see. Can you repeat on the split PNR capability as it's not a priority in NDC offer order management? Okay. So a PNR is not the same thing as an offer and an order. And so those are two different terminologies and used in different ways. And so it's not that it's not a priority in NDC, it's that it's a different thing. And so I am going to very much encourage you to come to next week's webinar, and actually after we're done with the question and answer, I'll put up on the screen exactly how to sign up for that. To come to next week's servicing one, because in that servicing, it talks about, the servicing webinar isn't talking about servicing in an offer and order world, it's talking specifically about servicing in NDC right now. And so that's a slightly different view from the ARM index, where each of the capabilities is viewed from an offer order perspective, not from a tickets and PNRs perspective. For Army, or Airline Retailing Maturity Index, we have in communication with more than 50 plus airlines. They offer data through direct or through sellers like TP Connects, Travel Fusion, and others. Which one is better to get Airline Retailing Maturity Index certification? Please suggest. Okay, so when you are a company, it depends on what type of company you are. So I assume this company is either a seller or they are an aggregator based on the question, okay? So when you are going out there as a business and gathering information or getting the data, you can go directly to an airline and have an NDC connection with them if you take in APIs and you've done development that way. Or you can go through an aggregator or some kind of middle company that brings you those APIs. It entirely depends on your business model where the value is, okay? So it depends on how you work with airlines. This is way into the commercial side of things, right? So I'm gonna be a little sticky about this and stay a bit away from it, but it depends on what your business need is, how you set up your connections with airlines. In the same way that it depends now, even if you're not using NDC, there's many different ways to get information from airlines. So with that, or to sell based on airlines that airlines distribute. So with that, I will say for the Retailing Maturity Index, we can only certify or recognize something that comes NDC all the way to the company that's being recognized. So if you are a seller, you need to have NDC from the airline through any middle person that you use, like an aggregator, all the way to your box, right? So if that NDC has to come all the way to you in order for you as a seller to be recognized, that means that if there's a middle person in between, they have to use NDC to you. And that is not always the case, because various aggregators, for various business reasons, may have proprietary APIs. So it simply depends. The whole facet of this is anyone who is recognized in the ARM index registry is recognized because they are using NDC, or they are using settlement with orders, or they are using any one of the IATA standards all the way to their door within their systems. Hope that answers that question. Okay, let's see. Besides offering the visibility to the industry, which is important, thank you, what other benefits for an organization is there to join the ARM index? Okay, so, oh, that question's separate. Okay, so what other benefits are there? So there's visibility within, obviously, within the industry, and that visibility that goes out, it goes out to everybody who's looking at it and looking for this. IATA utilizes this tool. This is how we find the companies that we invite to various events and industry input. This is how many of the companies come to talk about implementations in the implementation forum. This is how we know how to find you. So if you're not in the ARM index registry, oftentimes you won't be a company that we know to come and talk to about how the IATA standards are being used and implemented, and how airline retailing is being implemented in the industry. So in part, it gives IATA a tool to come and find you. But the real main reason is because it gives people the ability to come and find you at all within the airline retailing and utilize your business. If there is no value in being found for your company, then don't worry about being in the ARM index. And I say that as the person who helped to create this and really wants everybody to come and be a part of it. But have the business value there for you to be a part of it. And depending on where you are and what stage you are in business, that may or may not be valuable. Okay, so if a supplier or an airline is compliant for a given capability in, let's say, Schema 17.2, but not in 21.3, you consider that capability as a yes, although it's not being provided in 21.3. or the ARM index is being scored on schema level. Okay, so every single capability names what schema version it was validated against. So a company, I think the airline I demonstrated today had capabilities on 17.2. So they are not compliant with 21.3. They're not validated against 23.3. They're only validated for their messaging against 17.2. And so very specifically, you can know exactly which schema versions that particular company is working on and is using in a compliant way. So no, the schema versions aren't all interchangeable, unfortunately, not yet. But as of right now, if they're valid, whatever schema version they're on is those capabilities, it labels it for every single capability in each one of their company things. Okay, let me see if I can answer this one. Okay, so having assessed many airlines against ARM index, IATA must have already gained some insight about what points airlines specifically should be focusing on when building up those capabilities. Would it be possible for IATA to share those insights as a consolidated list for airlines to be assessed in the future? Okay, so yes, we have some insights in looking at the data that we're looking at. I keep harping on this servicing webinar next week, but there's also a paper that's coming out that goes with that servicing webinar. And some of the things that we've done is look at who's using what servicing capabilities and some insights there. The other thing that we're gaining insights on from looking at airlines holistically with the survey plus the partnerships deployment plus the capabilities is that we're seeing where they are in an overall journey. And we're seeing that while no individual airline necessarily takes the same path as others, there are some commonalities between them. And as we develop those insights further, we will continue sharing them or continue bringing them to the industry. So I don't have, last year was a big kind of transition year from NDC into the ARM index. And so this year we're really beginning to work with that data and to look at how can we help the industry move forward and move farther along. Okay, we have just 5 minutes left, so a few more questions. I noticed that not all companies list their partners on the registry. That's true. Does IATA ask for all companies to be listed? How can we see more partners? So the requirement to list a partner is you have to consent to having that partner listed, and your partner has to consent to being there. And so you're right, not every company wants to be listed as a partner. Not every company puts in the effort to get consent from both sides to be listed there. We are working to make that easier, but it will always be true that some companies are really excited to list all of the partners they work with, and some companies like to keep that a little bit quieter. So I don't think all companies in the registry will ever have all of their partners listed, but we do work to have more and more each day. How to get the ARM certification. We have experience in integration of different suppliers. Can we showcase this expertise to get certification? Okay, so how do you get into the ARM index registry? And the answer is you need to have at least one of the capabilities. And how to have one of those capabilities, I would say, is to go read the guidance documentation on what each capability is defined as. So take a look at the full list of capabilities. And it's on the ARMI website under the resources and documentation. You can see the little picture there. It's the resources and documentation tab. If you just click on there and scroll down to the bottom, every single capability is listed there, and there's a link to its documentation. So take a look and see which capabilities you have. There is a set way in which we validate the capabilities. And so you need to take a look at that, and it'll be submitted through that. It isn't just a business showcase where you show us what you do, because we have a specific set of criteria that are defined. So take a look at the criteria that are defined, and we'll be happy to work with you on whatever you're looking for. Okay, I think a lot of people have asked, are we sending the slides? And the answer is yes. Not only are we sending the slides, but you guys as participants will receive a recording of the webinar and the slides, and actually we'll send you some other helpful information, hopefully helpful information, like a fact sheet that kind of puts all this into just a 2-page document and all of that. And please feel free to reach out to us and ask any more questions that you might have in the future or anything else that you'd like help finding or addressing. Okay, and so actually, I'm being reminded to please show the final slide because I just promised you guys I would, and that is our upcoming webinars. So we have a series of modern airline retailing webinars, and the next one up is servicing next week, specifically servicing in NDC. And then the following one after that is modern airline retailing as a whole program and the value creation. And so please join us for those. Please sign up for them. Just like you signed up for this one, it's easy to sign up for those and come and participate in as best as you'd like. All right, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate everybody who joined and listened. And please, again, if you have any questions, reach out to us. We're here to help you. Thank you.